Assalamu alaikum, brothers. So the word Aleppo, I guess, is the tongues and the media a lot these days. And we just got a quick update on what's happening on the ground right now. But what I'd like to do briefly is go back and kind of talk about how did we get here. And I will not go back too much because we know that the Syrian revolution started around 6 years ago. And there is a lot happened during that time. But I would like to go back around a year and a half ago when the Assad regime was about really to fall. At that time, if you read the news which were coming, you will see that there was kind of agreement that the regime is lost most of the Syrian land. The rebels, they call them, or the militant groups, were in control of more than 83% of Syria at that time. And that alarmed, obviously, the regime and all its backers nationally and internationally. And be sure that the regime, the Syrian Assad regime, is not standing today by himself. And it wasn't the case when even the revolution started. So what happened when they saw the regime was about to collapse, even though they were supported with many militias, specifically from Iran and from the areas around Syria itself, as well as others who from behind the scenes were supporting the regime, they, with the kind of an implicit agreement with the major powers in the world, kind of gave Russia the mandate to go and try to salvage the regime. And this is what happened. The Russians came with their very advanced aerial capability and missile capabilities and so on, and they started basically bombing everything. The rocks, the buildings, the people, the animals, the plants, everything. And they started to attack the Syrian rebels in all their areas of control. But the main reason why the rebels or the militant groups where they are today, and the main reason they managed for Aleppo to fall like what happened today, is not really the ability of Russia or the military advanced military capability of the Russians. It was really the work of the intelligence from different international and local area around Syria, working within the militant groups. What happened is that those militant groups, because of their need for money and for weapons, they were, unfortunately, lots of them were being bought by the dollars, by the money. And even though most of their intentions maybe was a noble intention, but the reality is that they controlled them with this flow of money. And what they did basically within the past couple of years is that they started dividing the areas within Syria that were controlled by the militant groups into pockets of resistance, into cities, and starting to try and besiege them, trying to cut weapons, cut food and supplies to them, and at the same time trying to broker some deals with different militant groups and trying to make some truces. And it is the very famous old known fact is that if you divide, you conquer. And that's exactly what they did. They managed to divide the militant groups, and they managed through different countries in the area and through their intelligences to pull each of the groups into a different direction. So these militant groups, they were not united in a certain predefined goal. They were not united in their leadership, in their strategies, and so on and so forth. And what happened is that they made some truces with some of them while they besieged others and attacked others and so on and so forth. So you will be surprised to know that the strongest military group within Syria today is not in any way involved in what's happening in Aleppo. They are just sitting on the side watching as the people of Aleppo being massacred and all the issues which is happening with everybody saw on TV and on the social media. So with this strategy, and for Aleppo, because Aleppo is the second largest city of Syria, and it is actually was the financial and industrial city of Syria, they wanted to get this city out of the control of the militant groups into the regime's hand again. And the reason they wanted to do that is they wanted really to weaken the revolution to the point that where the militant groups will be forced to sit and negotiate with the regime and come up with something where they can keep a political solution, that they can keep the regime intact in a way, and they kind of get rid of the revolution as a whole. So with that tactic, they managed to besiege the city of Aleppo around 3 months ago. But the militant groups, when they saw the reality on the ground, that they are being besieged and they are being really killed, and they saw their lives on the line, they for once didn't listen to their money stream countries, the countries which is giving them the money. And they united in November this year, and they managed to break the blockade on Aleppo. And we have seen that, all of us, everybody, whoever was like following the news, it was a big victory, it was held as a big victory, and it was, where the rebels, the militant groups managed to break the siege of the city, and they gave a blow to the plans of the international community who are standing against the people of Syria. But what happened is that, knowing that, and as a result of that, the regime with its backers did two things. The first one is that they increased their military capability. They increased, the Russians specifically increased their aerial bombardment and attacks on the city of Aleppo. They brought in more of the militants from Iran and other countries to help the regime. And another one important thing which happened is that they pulled some of the militant groups from Aleppo to start and attacking ISIS, the Islamic State, in the north of Syria. So they pulled thousands of the militants away from the main really battle for Syria at that time and until today, and moved them away from that battle to attack ISIS at the north. And that's what weakened the people of Aleppo, or weakened the militants within Aleppo itself. And unfortunately, as a result of that, Aleppo was under besiege. It was encircled again. And few weeks later, with the intensifying of bombardment and so on and so forth, we witnessed the quick defeat and the quick, I would say, surrender and overtaking of lots of areas within Aleppo by the regime and its the militants who are supporting the regime. And suddenly, those people who were defending the city, those militant groups who are defending the city, withdrew. Basically, what happened in Aleppo in the past 2 weeks or so was not a defeat for the militant groups. It was the militant groups really just decided not to fight. And they unfortunately left the scene and left the defenseless men and women and children of Aleppo with very other few militant groups who refused to leave the city behind. And if you look into the whole picture, you will see that the main reason for what's happening is really that point of not having been united and being, I would say, slaves to what we call the dollar or the political money, the political dollar, which really shackled the militant groups and connected them to different, let's say, stakeholders within the Syrian issue, who have in their heart, they have no other reason to support those groups except to take them away from their duty of taking the regime down and really ending up in what we have today. The reality on the ground, as the brother from Turkey mentioned, nowadays there is still a small area within Aleppo which is besieged. 50,000 people, men, women, children, and you name it. You can see lots of videos in social media. And those people are really being taken hostages as we speak. And there are negotiations now between militant groups who have the capability really to help them, standing nearby and discussing and negotiating those release of those hostages in return for releasing some people, some hostages for the regime, from the regime soldiers and other militaries who back in the regime. And you never know where it end up. A few days ago there was some agreement and the people were leaving and they were killed as they were leaving Aleppo. And still the situation is changing, and the situation is really not very stable. But all what we can say today is that unfortunately the people who are still in Aleppo and really in other areas around Aleppo, they are almost left alone to kind of fend for themselves against the very advanced military capabilities of the Russians and on their backers. And unfortunately, lots of militant groups, except very few, are just standing around looking in and doing nothing, not knowing that unfortunately they will be next. Jazakumullah khairan.